I'm Amy Amason. I am a member of Christ Episcopal Church in Springfield. I am a cradle Episcopalian who also happens to be a fundraiser and have spent my career in higher education and hospitals and the arts and just about a little of everything. And so during my career living in 4 states and being part of several parishes, stewardship has been what I have done wherever I have been. So I'm excited to be here and an opportunity to visit with you about stewardship. And I encourage you to ask questions. And we have a great group here so we can help each other as we go as well. I'm also the new chair of a stewardship commission that the bishop has asked us to form, and we're very excited. We're going to have our first meeting next week, and our goal will be to find ways to support stewardship in the diocese. So more on that as we get started. But tonight, why don't we go around, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and tell me what parish you're from.
Okay, I'm Cheryl Dillard. I'm on the stewardship committee at St. Paul's in Kansas City.
I'm Alexandra Connors, and I'm also at St. Paul's, Kansas City.
Great.
Dan Philbrick at St. Thomas of Becket in Cassville. And behind me is my wife, Anita, whom I think is probably on that commission.
She is. Anita, nice to meet you. See you next week.
I like the way she's standing. She's right behind you. It's kind of like, behind every successful man's a good woman. I'm Larry Aaron. I'm a priest in charge at St. Mary Magdalene.
I'm Roger Reed. I'm parish administrator at St. Mary's, Kansas City.
Can you hear me? I'm Bob Carolla. I'm on the stewardship committee at Christ Church in Springfield.
I'm George Cleves, and I'm at Christ Church, St. Joseph, Missouri.
Wonderful. Did we get everybody? Well, I'm going to share my screen and we will get going here. Let's see. Just a minute, make sure I get the. Make sure. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Great. We are going to talk about a lot of stewardship, and we're going to talk a little bit about a lot of different kinds. And so I want to ask you to make sure you're asking questions and feel free to interrupt me. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was stewardship resources. And I'm going to share with you a webpage that Gary and I worked on, about not quite a year ago. It's on the diocese website, and it has a variety of resources. We have information for the Episcopal Network for Stewardship, and I want to make sure you have the password because the diocese has a membership, and the password is Luke 9:17. And we'll talk more about TENS in a few minutes, but I want to make sure you have that. Also, there's some information on that page about Project Resource, and we'll also talk about it. There are resources for digital giving. Digital giving is such an important part of what we do now, having that available, making it easy. I think the top 3 reasons for people not doing it is if they have to provide too much information, they have to set up an account, or it's just too cumbersome to complete a transaction. So it's important we look at that. On that page where we talk about digital giving, there's a list of the vendors, and you may or may not know that you can use PayPal through the diocese and not pay for the transaction fees. And then one of the other vendors also gives you a discount if we're a member of TENS, which the diocese is. So there are several options there if you don't already have one, or you want to check out a new one and see if it's better. Have quite a bit of information about plan giving and endowments, because that was an area that I was focused on in the Diocese of Atlanta. I was the plan giving and endowment volunteer advisor and worked with parishes. So I have a lot of information there. And then the Episcopal Church Foundation, which is a wonderful resource for lots of stewardship, but especially plan giving. And on our page, we also have links to PDFs from the Episcopal Church Foundation that you can use, and how to buy some of their plan giving materials. So we're going to get going and talk about annual giving, because that's what most of us think about when we talk about stewardship. And annual giving campaigns are something we all do, and we do them in different ways and different times. Some of you are already engaged and ready now, and some of you will be in September looking for opportunities to for help. And so I want to share a little bit about TENS, because I actually served on their board for a while and have a lot of respect for their materials. And each year they provide a new program for that year with a logo, and it's in sync with the liturgical calendar. And so this year's theme from TENS is More Than Enough. And so this, show you the logo. Oops. The logo is available on that site. It is in black and white if you don't want to have to print in color. So it's really helpful. Let me tell you a little bit about the materials that you'll find on that webpage. Each campaign has resources for the entire campaign for the fall. It includes logos and artwork. It includes seasonal meditations on generosity. It has sample letters and pledge cards that are excellent, that you can edit if you need to, want to. And then it has weekly meditations to use during October and November Sundays. So it's a really complete package and pretty simple. And so that's a great way to get started. It's simple and can be adapted. The next resource I wanted to mention is Project Resource, and you may not be as familiar with it. This is a wonderful in-depth training opportunity for teams from your parish. And Bob Carolla, who is on tonight, Bob, hello. Bob and I were co-chairs of stewardship at Christ Episcopal Church last year. And we have an interim rector who's asked us to stay on for a second year, and we are doing it. And last year, Bob and I did Project Resource. It provides a framework for giving. It does annual campaigns, and they actually go through major gifts and plan gifts as well. And it's a way to engage your faith community, as they say, in their life-changing work. It is a multi-week training and in a series of live meetings, so Zooms, and your team participates as an overall group, and then you go into breakout rooms. So you have time with your team to do some of the work, and then also to report back to the larger group. It is includes, at the end of it, you will have a year-round stewardship calendar. You'll have a step-by-step plan for implementing your fall campaign. You have hands-on training on how to make personal invitations to give. And they talk a lot about generational giving and individual donor motivations, which is really helpful. So it's a very complete package. I checked their website, and their next training is starts September 11th, and it goes to October 9th. It is from 4 to 6 Central Time. It's on Sunday for those weeks. And then during the year, you actually have some other opportunities to get back together with them. You have some one-on-one or some group activities as you're working through the campaign and then looking at how the campaign went afterwards. So they do a great job and I highly recommend them, especially if you can get a group together. It's very
Amy,
good.
Is there a charge for that or is it?
Yes, and I'm trying to remember, I think it was $250 for two. It was $125 a piece, I think. So it's just really very good. So I'm impressed with it. I see that Gary has put in the chat box those links that we were talking about earlier, just in case. I think there was also a discount for a certain number of participants. It would be wonderful to have 4 or 5 people. That would just be ideal. Bob and I did it as a team, which was great, but I wish we had been able to get more people with us.
It might be an idea to consider this as an item for a deanery grant.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Great idea.
Mhm.
Great idea. Any other questions or comments about annual giving campaigns?
So Amy, we belong to TENS, and you've given us the password, which is very clever. Again, is there any fee for a particular congregation, or is it a diocesan fee that we've already paid?
It's diocesan fee we've already paid.
Great.
And all the materials you just download.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it really is a great resource. I have found, and I'm sure all of you have had this experience where with a committee, we can get really bogged down in some of either the language or the reply card or the logo or something that really may not be the best use of our time. Where if I would rather we spent time looking at letters and thinking about how we're going to approach people and what kind of messages we're going to have during a service and what we're going to have in our newsletter and ways we're going to connect with people. And so for me, I like that a lot of that is already ready to go. There's nothing like a logo to get lots of opinions.
No comment.
I might share my experience with Stewardship Committee. Last year, we enlarged the committee because we want to embrace all demographics in our congregation. And it really became very difficult to manage. And so this year we're going down to a real small core of people and utilize these other people in other ways rather than coming to committee and arguing about the color of the cross and other minor things.
Thanks, Bob. Bob is a great co-chair. That's why I said I would do it a second year. So next if we're done with that, we're gonna move on to capital campaigns. And we're just gonna talk about them in general, but it's an opportunity to make sure we've talk about the characteristics and what some of the planning looks like. One of the characteristics is campaigns have a set dollar goal, and it's a larger one. It has usually a beginning and ending date. We start at a certain time and our plan is to finish a certain time. And that end date often has something to do with the project, whether it's a building project or endowment or debt. But that gives you an opportunity to complete it and have a celebration. It uses a committee of volunteers. And it is usually visionary or much needed projects. So it has a loftier intent And so the case is a little different for it. It also, the primary strategy is person-to-person contact. You're visiting with people individually about giving and their connection to the project. Often and generally, actually, they're multi-year pledges that people are making a gift that is over several years. One of the things we talk about on the secular side of capital campaigns versus annual is that annual are a checkbook decision. You write a check and you don't usually talk to advisors or anything. I realize I'm dating myself saying checkbook, but we're still saying that. But a capital campaign is one that may involve advisors. It's something you have, you think about in a different way. You may use different types of assets for it. So it also, it's usually larger. So it sometimes is given over several years. Generally, 90% of the goal comes from 10% of the donors. And there are examples where that's not true, but that is a standard in capital campaigns. So what are pre-campaign activities like? Because we know what campaign activities are like, and that is we're asking people to make a gift. So what are we doing in it before we start asking? Well, we start with a draft case statement, and that is a statement of purpose of why we need it and what the impact is going to be for this project. We usually do some study interviews. You often will engage a consultant who will interview a variety of members of your congregation and share with them that draft case statement and get their feedback, because you want to see if the case is resonating with the parish and find out what things maybe you need to change. Maybe some of the part of the project is not as of interest to them, or there's something they don't understand in that case statement that needs to be explained more fully, or that you need to take some more time to work on it. And then you recruit those volunteers we talked about who are going to help you solicit gifts. Prepare a campaign plan that shows what you're going to do when, and then complete that case statement so that you have a completed case statement that you can share and have a conversation and leave for someone to consider their donation. I love capital campaigns. I love them because they have such high impact. They bring us all together in a focus that is unlike anything else. And they are a fabulous celebration at the end. Any questions about capital campaigns?
Amy, I have a kind of a different, unusual question. So Mary Magdalene is the newest congregation in our diocese, and we're the only one that has a commercial loan. We have, thank goodness, it's less than $1 million now, but it used to be 2.5. So we paid this down. So the capital campaign was years ago for the original, and it was quite successful. We're wondering if we shouldn't do a second, for lack of language, a second capital campaign to continue to pay down our principal, because right now 60% of our operating budget goes to service our mortgage, which is not very fun. So what are the general thoughts about, in a sense, a second capital campaign to pay down principal?
Well, let me ask you about your first one. When did you complete it?
It was completed, I think 2010.
Okay. Oh gosh. Okay. And was that for the building?
Yes.
That the debt is for?
Yes. So
Okay.
it was a 2010, and I think they raised close to $500,000.
And then you borrow the rest.
Yes. So I think so. We borrowed $2 million, and we have paid down $1 million.
Okay, so you have $1.5 million left.
We have.
Yes, you could do another campaign.
Just a little bit less than $1 million, which is.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah.
A goal.
Yes. especially considering what a drain it is on your budget.
Very much so.
Yeah, and it's been, 12 years since you had
Exactly.
that last one. I definitely would think about that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. You would need to work on your case to explain it because you raised money for that building once. But the decision was to raise it to a point and then you were going to borrow. And so now you'd like to finish that.
Yes.
And if you ever want to visit about it, feel free to contact me.
Thank you.
Mhm. Anything else about campaigns?
I have a question for Larry. Have you spoken to St. Anne's?
To who?
St. Anne's, the Rev Meg?
Yeah. Sure. My friend Meg.
Yeah.
Yes, their mortgage was much less than ours.
Oh, yes.
But Meg and I have talked about this a couple times. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I know
Great.
they retired their mortgage, which was great.
Anything else on campaigns? Well, we will move on. I can get this to plan giving. So plan giving, I don't know if you know it, but in our prayer book on page 445, in the section on Thanksgiving of a child, we're actually directed to, ministers are directed to instruct us from time to time about the duty of parents to make provisions. And then if you read at the end of that, while they're in health, arranging for the disposal of their temporal goods, not neglecting if they are able to leave bequests for religious and charitable uses. And so one of the things I have found in the church, and it may be other denominations too, is that we don't talk about plan giving very much. That is not something we talk about. And so what happens is our members leave bequests, but they leave to other organizations. And having spent 25 years of my fundraising in higher ed, I know how aggressive we are about plan giving. And so I would sure like to see the church, and I've been a big proponent of us having more presence in our plan giving program as part of our year-round stewardship. And it doesn't have to be as difficult as it sounds. So let me tell you a little bit about gift planning. One of the things is to create a structure. And by that, I mean, establish an endowment fund to receive gifts. Many of you may already have an endowment fund, but if you don't, that's an important component. Mm-hmm. And as part of that structure in that endowment fund, to establish some policies and procedures, what you're going to accept, what you're not, how you're going to name things, where they go after they are received. The next one is what I consider one of the fun parts, and that is to create a legacy society, a society that is, its members are those who have included the church in their will. There's no need to ask people how much, you just want to know if they've included the parish in their will, because this helps donors stay connected and content with their commitment. That's an important part, that they still feel connected and appreciated, and you can promote you can work with them on having events. You can do an annual letter, all kinds of ways to do that. And if anybody is interested in any of these things, feel free to let me know. I've got materials that I can share with you about most of these topics. So you also need to establish an educational and awareness program, keeping the message simple. Start with wills. Over 80% of all planned gifts are wills or bequests from a will. So make it simple. Don't make this complicated. And also, when you're talking about this, you can include other parts of plan giving. Establish a year-round plan so that you are continuing to share information throughout the year and create a response system. And by that, I mean, you need to have, if somebody calls the parish office and wants to talk about a planned gift, there is somebody that they can be, that can contact them. There's somebody in the parish that's designated to have that conversation. And also have a plan for when a planned gift does come in. How do we acknowledgement? Who does that? Who signs it? And also the administration of it. So the check comes, where does it get deposited? Who deposits? How do we decide what the restriction is and which bucket it goes in? So those are important to have in advance of starting the program, so that you can be efficient and take good care of people's gifts. I always consider it such an honor when someone has included the parish in their estate plans and the gift comes. And one of the things I forgot to mention about Legacy Society is it's wonderful to thank people while they are here. Because there have been many times in my career where an estate gift came in and we were surprised. And I've so often thought, I wish I could have thanked them while they were alive. And I'm sorry I didn't get to tell them what an impact that they made. Obviously, that wasn't important to them, but we would have liked to have done that. I'm going to go back just a minute. When we talk about the year-round plan there, I also wanted to mention a couple of things that you can include in that. And one of them is having someone talk about end-of-life plans that include estate planning, but also what their plans are for their service, and what their family's wishes are. And there's actually Episcopal Church Foundation has a wonderful booklet. It's an 8.5 by 11 booklet that you can order that is kind of a workbook for doing that. So you could have somebody come in and have those available. And that would be a wonderful way to talk about it and help them. I always tell the story about my parents, who were both Episcopalians in this little town in Kansas, and they had everything written out for us. Literally everything written out for us for their service. And what a gift that was. We used to laugh at my parents about it, because my dad would take me to the safe deposit box and make sure I knew where it was and that I was ready. But my goodness, when the time came, it was wonderful to have it all written out and to know that, it was exactly what they wanted, and I was going to be able to honor them that way. So it is important that we talk about it. But the Episcopal Church Foundation has that workbook, but they also have brochures on various types of planned giving, wills and trusts and annuities. And on the stewardship page of the diocese, we have links to PDFs for each of those. So you can look at them. It also tells you how to purchase them as well. And those individual booklets about wills, etc., are trifold, and they're not very expensive at all. And they're wonderful to have around. They do a great job with all their materials.
Amy, can I make a comment?
Yes.
I think in these educational areas, as a physician, I think that the church is an excellent place to introduce the concepts of your end-of-life medical care and make sure there are appropriate documents about how you would like that handled as well. Because at a time of crisis, near death, this can cause great confusion and concern in families. And it sort of dovetails in with the giving, and you're giving directions to your family about how you want your last days to go.
Yeah.
And of course, my final pitch to all these in these situations is to tell people to get rid of all their stuff.
Yeah.
Before they exit, or at least give a directive of what to do with your stuff, rather than leaving that burden. I've seen so many of my friends that have really struggled with the emotion of going through friends and parents' belongings. And I think that's a great gift that I have already undertaken for my family. So my attitude is it's my stuff and it's not your stuff, and you can get rid of anything that's mine, period. No questions asked, no guilt.
Bob, I'm glad you mentioned healthcare directors. I was a hospital chaplain for 20 years and did a lot of medical ethics. There is a great resource in Kansas City. It's for the nation actually, but it's called the Center for Practical Bioethics. And they have a really nice booklet called Caring Conversations that could be part of a holistic presentation in terms of estate planning, funeral planning, and then healthcare. But I'm glad you mentioned that.
I'm glad to know about that. We have an organization in Springfield called Hospice Foundation of the Ozarks.
Oh, sure.
And we have a program that we call Bucket List +1. And it addresses all of these same concepts and the importance of having volunteers that can sit down with people and one-on-one and look them in the eyes and communicate the importance of this. It has, I think that's a wonderful service that the church can provide.
Yes.
What's the name of that in Springfield? What's the name of that in Springfield?
Hospice Foundation of the Ozarks.
Okay.
Just Google it. And I'm on the board. If there's any difficulty, I will answer questions.
Thanks, Bob. That's great. Anyone else have comments or questions about plan giving? It is important. It doesn't have to be difficult. It's just having some conversations during the year and being intentional about them. See if there's something in the chat. Oh, good. Thank you, Larry, for putting in the chat the name of the organization. Center for Practical Bioethics.
Ethics.
Thanks. All right. Well, next we're going to talk about year-round stewardship. If I can get my computer to work. There we go. I call some of what we talk about for year-round stewardship is a gratitude plan. I think we all feel the gratitude, but we don't always act on it. And so thinking about ways to do that. Thanking donors and volunteers is such a powerful way to acknowledge and encourage more generosity. And sometimes I think in the church, like we don't talk about money, sometimes we don't thank as much either. We have intentions, but it gets complicated sometimes, and it just doesn't need to be complicated. It's wonderful to thank people. And it's important to do so thoughtfully, meaning that it needs to be more individual. You know, a large blanket statement to everybody usually falls on deaf ears to some degree. So thinking about ways to do it more intentionally. So one way is to encourage thank yous for each ministry in your parish, as well as giving. We think about giving. We need to make sure we're doing that. Rule of thumb is trying to get a thank you note out 48 to 72 hours after a pledge arrives for the annual campaign, and having a couple of thank yous for the annual campaign, whether it's one written and one call, two written, but something so that people know how much they are appreciated. And then for your other ministries, one way to do that, because it can feel burdensome, I understand, but it's so important, is to have one person in each of those ministry committees be responsible for the thank you. So after an event, they send a thank you to each person who helped work on it. And also including this one is one that really drives me crazy. So putting a sincere thank you on the quarterly pledge statement. Sometimes, because those come out of our computer systems, they look like an invoice. And instead of looking like a water bill, I really encourage you to find a way to put a sincere thank you on it with a signature, a real one, because that's a thank you for the gifts that have already been given. and encourage them and help them understand why it's important to continue giving. And then use your newsletter to list those people who participate in some of those outreach activities for those ministries. I know that's always a little scary that you're going to forget someone, but if you do and they let you know, you can add them into the next newsletter. But if you have somebody on each ministry committee who is thinking about this part, they'll be the ones at the event or know who dropped off food or other canned goods for something, or we have lots in our church that help the ship, one of the women's shelters, and bring things, but list them and thank them for their help. Do you all have any examples of ways you thank people in your parish?
I've been trying to do a thank you as part of, we try to keep our Sunday announcements brief, but just because we're an all volunteer operation at Mary Magdalene, I just try to focus on different things, whether it's, Jane who does our coffee hour, or we have 8 acres of land, believe it or not. We've got this huge commercial mower, thanking them, just one group and having it be brief. But I think that's a nice way to gather the community before we have liturgy.
That's a great idea.
Okay. Our committee, when we have our committee, our annual meeting, we make sure to have a gratitude for each person who has been like the chair of something, like the head of the the altar gilding, and really make it a big celebration of the person who's been doing the music, the person who's been doing the filming and that sort of thing, and celebrate everybody at our annual meeting. That's kind of what the annual meeting ends up being, is a celebration of all the good things that people have done during the year.
And we're so small, we can pretty well do it all word of mouth.
Yeah, we do.
That is a great idea. That would really change the tenor of some annual meetings about a celebration rather than just reports. A celebration of people. Anyone else? I think Bob's trying to unmute. Oh, okay.
I have participated in the stewardship program here in Springfield at Christ Church. And we have a sort of a nice thank you note. And with the scripture, it's all printed out. It's very nice with the church logo and all of that. And then the committee members sign it. And I have come to the conclusion that that is totally inadequate. That I attend a church, Bethesda by the Sea in Florida in the winter, and the rector there writes a personal letter to everyone. And it blew me away. I mean, when I got that letter, I called him and I raised my pledge. It was just so important to come from the top. And we talk about communication being one-on-one and direct and not through email and that modem. But I've kept this letter. It was such a beautiful document that I want to use some of that phraseology in our thank yous here in Springfield. And a letter is sort of, it's more than just a verbal thank you. It's proof, and you really remember it and treasure it.
Thanks, Bob.
That's above and beyond. I don't know that we can ask all rectors to do this, but this man is an exceptional person, and he's 65 and is an interim at this church, and he's done it all over the country in major churches. But this is the method that he has found to be the most effective, a personal letter for himself.
That's great. That's great. I think you have to find what you can do in your parish and make it as personal as you can. And we're all in different situations. During the campaign this last fall at Christ Episcopal Church, where Bob and I were co-chairs, we were without a priest and we were without an interim. Our associate was on the way leaving as well. And so it was kind of an awkward time for us to do a campaign and to thank. But we appreciate our volunteers' help in doing that for it. Anything else on that?
Yeah, one more. I'm from
Please.
St. John Springfield, and we have something that we've done for several years. And it's a little bulletin box in the messenger, the monthly newsletter. And when somebody does something like plant a flower bed or something, they said, oh, I don't want to be recognized. Don't use my name, whatever. Like, but we have, something about, the volunteers who planted the whatever or did the whatever. And then the tagline at the end is, and that's stewardship. And so whether it was the people in the kitchen who, engineered a dinner or whatever.
Wow, that's wonderful. And Linda, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you. Sorry I was late. I was
That's all right.
Subdeacon at a Ascension Day service.
Linda is also on the new Stewardship Commission that's going to meet next week for the first time. So it's nice to meet you now too.
Good to have a face to go with the name.
I know.
Vaguely familiar, but when I had just the name, I was getting nowhere.
That is fine. Great. Well, thank you for that too. All right, we're going to move on to church seasons. This is a way to identify year-round stewardship themes for congregational activities each month. Each month may be a bit much to do, depending on the size of your parish and the volunteers and staff, but you can also think about doing it quarterly instead. And so one of the ways to do it, I'm going to give you a couple of examples, is to pick some themes. I've got 4 themes here that you could use and think about doing some kind of congregational activity during the year and picking a church season that goes with these. Another idea is doing an example by month. And I'm going to give you some of these. And if anybody wants any of this, I have a full year's worth of it. But this is a way to think about it by the seasons. For Epiphany, you could talk about light. For Lent, sacramental life. Lent and Easter, discipline. Easter, new life. And Pentecost, inspiration. So you could also, as I said, just pick 4 and do every quarter, do something. As part of it, but it's a way to get started in year-round stewardship, because I know that sounds overwhelming, but if you add a little plan giving and some of this and some thank yous, you're almost there for the whole year, and it becomes intentional. So I'm going to end with my favorite phrase about stewardship, that is, stewardship is what we do with all that God has given us all the time. And I think when we think about all the ways we're blessed, it makes it much easier to think about how we're going to impact the stewardship in our parish. And there is my email address if you want to contact me and if I can help you with any materials. Any other questions, comments?
Amy, I have a question. Can you email us your presentation, each of us?
I think so. Gary, do you have all the emails that I can? Oh, I don't know. Maybe Gary left us.
Oh, no, I'm here. I was just doing the thumbs up. So yes, we can do it.
Yeah, so you can get me the emails or I can send you the presentation.
So send the presentation to me and I can include it with the video when the video goes up.
Great.
I can also send it out to everyone that's on this, that's signed up to join us tonight.
Okay,
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
my pleasure.
There's
In-
also a really nice little book. It's by Henry Nouwen. And it's simply on stewardship. It's very brief. You may be aware of that, Amy.
Mhm.
But it's got it's really a well done spirituality of stewardship. And no surprise here, it's all about gratitude. But I think it's a great resource for stewardship committees to have, to ground it in our spirituality, so that it's not just fundraising. It really is an experience of gratitude and expressing that.
That's a great idea. And that actually gave me an idea of, for the stewardship page we have for the diocese, is to have a place to list some of everyone's favorite books on stewardship and include that.
Someone can send me details of that. I'll share that.
Okay. Will do. Good. Anything else? Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation. I am thrilled to be in a room, although it's virtual, with people who are interested in stewardship and want to continue to learn. We're all continuing to learn, and it's wonderful to learn from each other. And I think that's part of what the Stewardship Commission will be about as we go forward.